Hey guys, welcome to the Magfed Ranch Paintball channel, and today I'm going to be doing a Final Inspect Fridays. But before I get into it guys, please subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, and of course turn on your notification bell. I'm posting new content every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And of course, moving forward, I plan to do some more content, maybe on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. But please let me know what you guys want me to view. You know, obviously video, and obviously comment, and obviously share on. And of course guys, please watch the whole video and then of course share and comment at the end. I like to love to answer all your guys' comments and questions, so please feel free to leave anything on there if you guys have any questions. Okay, alright, so today's Final Inspect Fridays guys is going to be how many rounds does your loadout need to be? So as you guys know, Final Inspect Fridays is typically about kind of what you should be preparing, what you should be looking at for your weekend event, right? Before you go out on the field and play. So the question begs is how many rounds does your setup, does your loadout need? And as always guys, there's not one clear-cut answer, right? There's answers, many different answers, and the right answer is going to be different for the different situation, right? You have to be mission specific in terms of what your loadout, what your marker, what your obviously specific needs are. And that's kind of the cool thing about Magfed, is that it can be very specific like that. You can have different setups, different loadouts, different markers, different tools in essence for the different situations, okay? And so I'm kind of going to go over all the different options, not really saying that one specific loadout, right? One's better than the other, but just kind of giving you guys some guidelines as far as what to look out for. And more importantly, how that's going to dictate the rest of your loadout, right? For example, I mean, most hopper-fed gameplay, right? Most speedball gameplay, you go out there with, your hopper-fed marker, a big pod, right? A big feeder, big hopper, and anywhere between 600 to 1,000 rounds in pods, and you're pretty straightforward, right? You have obviously a big tank, an air tank, a peanut type of air tank, and you're pretty good to go for most of the day, okay? But in Magfed, that could change depending on, like I said, your situation, your gear, and what the mission calls for, okay? Now, as always guys though, I do specify just kind of one criteria, and that is going to be FSR usage. And so I'm not going to be discussing obviously round ball usage. And because of that, I'm not going to be discussing box mags, guys. Now, hopefully one of these days, right, there'll be a good working, mass-produced, mass-marketed drum mag that's FSR capable, okay? But until that day comes, I'm not going to be talking about that. But I'll kind of hypothetically talk about what's needed if, you do end up getting in that situation. Okay, so once again, guys, FSR, and then of course, kind of specific depending on what your needs are for this mission, okay? And so on the table here, guys, I have different chest rigs, different shingles, different, from minimalist all the way to kind of more full loadout type setups, and then also a couple of backup accessories, okay? So let's talk about the number of rounds first, because that's what this video is about, okay? What is a good starting number of rounds, and therefore, right, magazines that you're gonna need? I think for me, a good number to me is 4 magazines worth of FSR. Okay, so whether that's, the different type of magazine capacities, right? You have the 18 rounders from the M17, the Vulcan M17. You have 19 rounds from the T15, okay? And then of course you have the 20 rounds from the EMF. And then, you do have some other markers as well, the 468, although I don't really recommend it with FSR. I'm not very familiar with the TGR, but I know the TGR, for example, has 18 round magazines, and then the 468 has 20 round DMAG magazines, okay? And so 18 to 20 seems to be the kind of the sweet spot number. So if you're talking about 4 magazines worth, you're talking literally about 76. Is that right? No, 72, I'm sorry, to approximately 80 rounds worth of FSR. Okay, so let's start from that initial loadout of 4 magazines, okay? And so, you know, for a chest rig setup, you're gonna want something very light. You know, if you're planning to carry only 4 mags total, you know, 1 in your marker and then 3 on your chest rig, you can go with something super light, super minimalist, like this one Tigris that I have here. I really like this one. It is obviously made for airsoft guys. So one of the downsides with airsoft gear is that it kind of mimics real steel setups, and so the magazine sizes are going to match. So for example, the 2 pistol pouch magazines that they supply here, unfortunately, it will not fit our TIPX magazines. Okay, you see that? It's too big. And so it won't fit some TIPX magazines, so you're going to need something separate to deal with that. It does have a pouch up front here, kind of just like a medic pouch or a utility pouch that you could use to toss the magazines in here, but it's not really the ideal. The other cool thing about the one Tigris setups too is that they do use a Velcro shingle. So if worse comes to worse, they do offer other shingles that you could get and then change the, you know, the adaptability of the magazines, right? You could get ones where it just has MOLLE, and then you could add magazine pouches the way you want it. But like I said, for a 4 magazine setup, I think this is something that I would prefer, just something super minimal, super light, don't need anything more than that. No need to carry extra weight. Or something I really love, I've always pushed this on my videos, guys, is the Blue Force Gear 10-speed chest rig, right? I really love kind of like this spandex type of magazine because it accommodates both the T15 magazines, as you see here. So it also accommodates the M17 mags as well. Okay, so that Velcro kind of just gives you a little bit of flexibility to put, you know, different size magazines in there. And then also it'll, you know, because it's kind of stretchy and tight, it will also work with other things. Let's say, for example, you're playing a scenario game and you want to put, you know, grenades, flashbangs, maybe like some other type of tools or whatever you need, and it will hold it in there as well, versus the one Tigris style where it's very specific, right? It's meant for just an M4, you know, AR-15 style magazine, right? And so it fits those magazines better. It will fit the larger M17 magazine, but it'll get kind of tight if you try to fit 3 magazines across. As you can see here, it really stretches out the magazine pouch, and so it's going to be tight to fit 3 magazines. So this is going to be more for like a D-mag, you know, T15 setup. Whereas this one, the stretchy material, and I think the EMF mags are going to be a little bit bigger as well too, guys. So with the bigger magazines, you probably want the stretchy magazine pouch, or you're going to want something designed more for like an AR-10 or AK magazine. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now, how is this going to dictate the type of gameplay you're going to go into as well, right? So it's light, it's minimal, it's fast, so it means you're going to be able to carry a more lightweight package, but it also means that for, like, let's say a really big scenario event, where you might be out on the field longer, you might be having to do longer missions or continuous missions where there's no chance to reload or re-air up, that setup might not be the ideal setup, right? And so like I said, you really can get very specific. And some, you know, of course, if you keep your shots to the minimal, you don't shoot past that 72 or 80 round limit, you can definitely play some big games but you just can't get into some really long, prolonged fire engagements, right? So keep that in mind. In terms of air capacity, you know, having only 72 or 80 rounds, you're pretty much going to be good with any air setup. Okay, so any type of tank, from a 10 CI tank to, of course, a 13 CI tank. I know they make the 17 CI tank, even though it's a little bit long, right? It kind of sticks out a little bit longer. Kind of like here on our Seal Recce clone, you can see here that the 17 CI tank sticks out further past the buttstock than what a 13 CI tank would stick out, right? This 13 CI would just be flush on your buttstock, and then a 10 CI tank, you'll notice it's actually going to be inside, and so it's going to be more compact. But with only 4 magazines, a 10 CI tank is going to be plenty, especially if you're using a fairly efficient marker like the T15 or the EMF. I don't know the efficiency on the 468, but I'm sure you'll be okay with 4 20-round D-mags with the 468, or even some of the like the TGR as well too. I'm sure it'll be plenty. I mean, both of those are pretty much kind of spider-ish type blowback systems, and so you'll be plenty fine with 4 mags. Now, the M17, while not as efficient as those other systems, you know, 4 mags at 72 rounds, the heat core is going to be totally fine with a 10 CI tank. And then, of course, if you're rocking a 13 CI tank, as most people will, that either one, 13 CI is going to work with any of those markers for that 4 magazine loadout. Okay. Let's move to the next capacity, right, which is going to be 5 magazines in your marker. So I have a 1 Tigris example here, and I've showed you guys this one before, but this one has 4 pouches for your magazines. And you'll notice that this one is a little bit cut a little bit wider. The magazines pouches are, so that way it'll fit both the T15, M17, and I'm sure it'll fit the CF20 magazines or die-dam magazines as well, because you can see that it'll cut a little bit bigger for like an AR-10 setup, AK setup, but it'll still work with the AR-15 type size magazines. The other cool thing too is that the pistol pouches that comes with this chest rig, they actually do fit the TIPX magazines, okay? And it has 4 of them. Not that, you know, unless you're running some type of remote line, you're not going to be able to shoot 5 magazines out of your TIPX before the CO2 goes out. Typically, a TIPX is, you know, it will shoot with 1 CO2 cartridge about 3 7-round magazines, so about 20, 21 rounds. Okay, but at least you know you have the provisions for it. And then, of course, or if you know, of course, if you're rocking an FSC, it's going to have you know, its own CO2. Although I just don't think the FSC magazines are going to fit in this pouch. And so, like I said, once again, guys, it's kind of the hit or miss with airsoft gear. You don't know if the paintball equipment, right, magazines are going to work with the airsoft stuff. Okay, so really would love to see more, you know, accessory type of gear for Magfed paintball specifically in the future. This one also has a pouch that you can zip up and carry whatever else you need, right? Squeegees, wipes, extra CO2 cartridges, those type of things. Okay, guys? But yeah, so in a 5 magazine loadout, right, that's going to be 100 rounds. Or of course, you know, 5 times 18, that's going to be 90 rounds. And so that's going to be better suited. I think ideally for me, this is kind of the perfect setup for kind of more style of gameplay. If you're playing, even if you're playing an all scenario event, 100 rounds, you know, 90 to 100 rounds of first strike is more than enough. As long, especially if you're not engaging in like huge firefights, because in a scenario event, right? You're trying to complete missions more, and engagements are more of a byproduct of those missions. Whereas, you know, if you're playing just kind of a Magfed, just elimination match, then you're gonna just need to shoot more rounds. But this will be ideal for that as well, right? Because 100, 90 to 100 rounds is a decent amount to get for just a Magfed match of elimination. And then also, the other reason why this is kind of the ideal number is because 5 magazines, most markers, or pretty much all the markers that I just mentioned, the 13 CI air tank is capable of firing all 5 magazines, no problem, without a drop in FPS. And that's the key, right? Is, obviously no difference in the FPS due to a loss in air pressure. And of course, with the more efficient markers like the T15, the EMF, and I'm sure the other blowback systems like the TGR or 468, you won't have an issue rocking 5 mags through a 13 CI tank. But when you start looking at like the M17, the M17's kind of maximum magazine for a 13 CI tank, maximum amount of magazines you can fire before you start experiencing air loss is about 6 magazines. And so 5 magazines for the M17 is kind of its sweet spot in terms of capacity for a 13 CI tank. Okay, guys? I won't get into these other accessories next, guys. Once I'll talk about the last loadout next, okay? But yeah, I think 5 rounds to me is the ideal sweet spot. Four magazines is kind of, you want to just have something quick, minimal, fast run and gun type of setup, or you're really planning just to take really key sniper shots and not really get into some huge battles. That extra 18 to 20 rounds can come into a big play for those situations. Okay, and then lastly, of course, we have kind of quote unquote a full leveled out, which would be 7 magazines, right? 6 on your chest, and then 1 in the marker. And once again, guys, this vest from Condor, although it will work with the M17 mags, it is designed more for the AR-15 style. So although you'll see that it will work with 1 M17 mag, if you try to squeeze 2 in here, it's going to be super tight and it's not going to work. So this setup is going to be more for like a T15, a D-mag type of setup. The M17 and the EMF magazines being bigger, the Didam magazines are not going to fit in here as well, okay? So this will hold 6 magazines of the T15, pretty much AR size magazines. And then, of course, it has extra MOLLE, right? So I attached a TIPX holster on one side, right? So you can rock an extra pistol. In essence, this is going to be more of a full, quote-unquote, combat loadout, guys, right? So you can rock the TIPX pistol or some other pistol using the MOLLE. You can rock 6 magazines for your primary marker, your primary carbine. And then, of course, it has provisions for pistol mags as well. Okay, and these do fit the TIPX barely, as you guys can see here. Like I said, this is the one from Condor, guys. So if you guys are out there interested in what chest rigs will work with our paintball gear, this is the one from Condor. And so yeah, it holds 4 pistol, and then of course it also has, it holds 6 pistol, so it has literally 3 pistol pouches in front of the 6 mags. This would be an ideal setup for a remote line as well too, because then you can run your remote line on your TIPX and then be able to run all, in essence, 7 magazines, right, through the TIPX. But if you're not going to do that, if you're only just going to be running CO2, then of course you could always attach some CO2 cartridge holders to the other MOLLE side, or of course you can attach it to other parts of the vest as well too, and just have like some more cartridges to hold, and then you can shoot more magazines through your TIPX that way. that being said, in terms of your primary carbine, 7 magazines is going to be kind of right there, guys, in terms of the limit for most of these markers with the 13 CI tank, right? There's videos out there, guys, watch it. There's a video for the EMF showing that it shot about 7 magazines before the air started to go down. Now, I know in that video, they shot 8 magazines, but if you'll notice that by the end of the 8 magazines, it was already shooting at like 210, 215 PSI. So 7 magazines is kind of the limit for most fairly efficient Magfed markers, right? So the T15, that's fairly efficient, the EMF, and like I said, I'm sure the other blowback designs are decent as well, 468, TGR. 7 magazines is going to be kind of the limit for a 13 CI tank, guys. So this would be kind of like your max loadout if you're going to be using an in-tank butt stock option. Now, we'll talk about the remote line real quick, just because, you know, we want to discuss it, right? If you guys want to go past this loadout, then of course that's going to be where the remote line setup is going to be pretty much a requirement, a necessity. And then of course at that point as well too, you can definitely rock the 7 magazines for your secondary, right? Your TIPX, and that shouldn't be a problem. Okay. In terms of how you would hold your tank though for that setup, right? You're going to need some type of tank pouch, and the problem with a lot of these kind of just shingle style vests is this one is decent, guys. So like I said, go check out this one from Condor. But most of them don't really have a good back strap where like a belt would normally go. Okay, this one technically does, and so it's thick enough that you could attach your tank pouch here without it flopping around, right? But if you notice these other ones, they have a very skinny, if at all, right? If they at all, oh, I'm sorry, here it is. So they have a very skinny back strap, the one on the bottom here, okay? And so it's gonna be very, it's not gonna be ideal to attach your tank pouch there, okay? It's gonna flop around a lot, okay? So this one, for example, the Blue Force gear, it has a very skinny one as well, right here. And then the one Tigris, it has a skinny one as well, okay? So you're gonna need to wear a battle belt then, so it's just going to be adding more stuff to your loadout. Just keep that in mind if you're going to want to lock the remote line. We've talked about this in our other video, guys, right? Even though the remote line setup makes your marker more lightweight per se, because now you're using just a mil-spec style buttstock and buffer tube, air through tube, right? It has the remote lines, the fittings, the tank pouch, okay? Oh, real quick, obviously we could always attach more magazines if needed. You know, something like this, the one from Condor, because it gives us extra magazine pouches, Molly, we can attach more pouches to it. And there's other different pouches available out there that you guys can do. But same thing with like the Blue Force gear. This is the reason why I love this chest setup, rig setup so much, guys, is that it has Molly on both sides too, that you could expand it to 4 or 5 magazines if you want. You can also obviously add the pistol if you want, and then maybe add pistol pouches for, you know, pistol mags. So the cool thing about these setups where it has extra Molly, you can kind of modularly adapt it to your needs. Whereas unfortunately, the one Tigris type of setups where it's just a Velcro shingle, you have less adaptability, okay? So let's talk about the gameplay that this would be in. I think, to me, this is obviously gonna be a safe bet for all the different types of gameplay, right? Obviously, if you're just playing just a single elimination, you're not having to worry about wasting ammo because you have obviously more magazines than the other setups, right? You have 7 magazines total, so that's, you know, 140 rounds. At the minimum, it's going to be what, 120, well, 7 times 18, right? So 123. Is my math correct? Okay. Yeah. So 7 times 8, that's 60. 56. 126. Anyways, guys, it's gonna be right around 120 something to 140 rounds, okay? And so that's gonna be plenty for just a kind of an elimination match. But even in an all-day, you know, scenario event, a 7 magazine capacity with an in-butt stock tank, as long as you're being obviously very conscientious of your shots, using the first strike rounds performance, accuracy, capability to its fullest, and not just shooting wastedly, right? Zeroing your marker and actually taking accurate aim shots. That's going to obviously reduce the amount of rounds you'll fire, so that'll help. But if you're not, then obviously you definitely gonna want to run a remote line, run extra mags, so that way you're not gonna run out of ammo, okay, for that setup. And then lastly, I want to talk about is obviously a dump pouch. You're gonna need some type of dump pouch, unless you're planning just to, when you go do a reload, you're just gonna insert it back into your, you know, your chest rig pouches, right? I've always done a dump pouch, guys, because in a firefight engagement, when you need to go make a critical fast speed magazine, reload, you don't want to have to think about trying to put it back in the pouch. It's a lot easier just to dump it into your dump pouch. And it's a lot easier. The other thing I like about it too is just kind of easier to know which magazines are spent and which magazines aren't spent. So for example, you know, as I'm playing throughout the day, I'll have a sequence of which magazines I'm using, right? So maybe my first reload, I'll start from the left side here and then kind of work my way to the right, or vice versa, right? I'll say I'll work myself from the left, whichever one is going to give me the fastest reload, right? Since if you're right-handed, your reload is going to have to be done with your left hand, and so this one's going to be kind of just the most natural location one, and then as you go over, it's going to be a little bit less. But anyways, you just got to figure out which sequence you're going to do, and then stick to that sequence so that you know, hey, magazines left to right or right to left. But if you have a dump pouch, you don't have to worry about that. You literally just dump it in your dump pouch, and you're good to go. Okay, guys. So hey, yeah. So what is your guys' round count when you guys go play on the field? Regardless if it's a short game, big scenario game, and obviously, you know, it's going to dictate your air system, right? In-butt stock tank versus remote line setup. And then of course it's also going to dictate obviously your gameplay as far as which, what style gameplay you're going to do. Yeah, so let me know, guys, what do you guys think? What do you guys use? How many rounds do you guys use? Appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. Check you guys next time. Peace.